US and Israel's campaign together, campaigning Ireland. Yeah. The United States president said he had no idea about the attack on Iran's gas field. Let's take a listen.
And a rare rebuke of Israel from the US president. Donald Trump says he knew nothing about Israeli attacks on Iran's South Pars gas field, the largest in the world. The president...
Let's take a break there. So, the US and Israel campaigned together in Iran to have a new regime change. And what does Israel do? Why would you go ahead and make an attack on Iran without consulting Washington? That seems very odd. But let's continue.
Posted on social media, no more attack will be made by Israel on the area unless Tehran retaliates against Qatar, which of course shares the gas field with Iran. Oil and gas.
So in response to the attack, the US says there will be no further attack on Iran gas field.
Facilities came under attack from Iran on Wednesday, including sites in Qatar, the UAE and Kuwait. Saudi Arabia says it intercepted 4 missiles over Riyadh as foreign ministers from the region met in the capital. CNN's Oren Lieberman joining us now from Jerusalem. And Oren, I want to learn more, if we can, about what happened with the Israeli attack on the Iranian part of the South Pars gas field. What do we know? What do we understand? We've certainly heard from the US president. Anything from the Israeli side?
Becky, before we saw President Donald Trump's response, we had heard from 2 Israeli officials that the attack was coordinated with the United States. And that, of course, is no surprise. Since the very first opening strikes nearly 3 weeks ago now, Israel and the U.S. have been coordinated on nearly every aspect of this. And that's not...
So as you heard, the US and Israel have coordinated since the very first strike and have continued to coordinate, both campaigning in Iran for this regime change. So what happened along the way? Why would Israel go off and do something on its own that would then impact how the rest of the world is looking at their campaign, looking at the US, looking at Israel? And I'm sure US allies are asking questions. What is happening?
So Israeli officials say the attack on the South Pars gas field was coordinated with the U.S. and it was intentionally targeted at gas and electricity infrastructure, not at oil infrastructure, to insulate the attacks and the price of fuel in the United States from Israel's ongoing attacks. Of course, that didn't work when Iran lashed out and attacked gas and oil infrastructure around the region.
Israel went ahead and coordinated the strike. And they're saying that it was coordinated with the US. So a bit of a confusion there in terms of, who ordered, was there coordination, did Israel act alone? And then we are hearing now that Iran responded and retaliated as well. So what is going to happen?
The idea that 3 weeks into a war that Israel wants to continue, that Israel would just simply go rogue and carry out attacks that are not coordinated with the US is incredibly hard to believe right now.
Well, we cannot verify whether there was coordination or not, but certainly what this is showing that there is some confusion regarding the attack on Iran's gas field and the responses that people are giving on this attack on Iran's gas field. Let's take a look at Iran's gas field and what it is. I said, according to edition.cnn.com, what is South Pars gas field and why is Israel's attack an escalation? An Israel strike on Iranian facilities in South Pars gas field marked a significant escalation in the war, prompting a furious Iran to attack major energy facilities of its Gulf neighbors. Energy prices were already spiking because of the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, means oil and gas that is already produced can't get to its intended customers on time. And so with all of this happening, with the close of the Strait of Hormuz and its immediate effect on the global market and oil transport, Why then would Israel go ahead and make this attack, which reports are saying, viewing it as an escalation in the already ongoing conflict? South Pars is a part of the world's largest natural gas reserves, and Japan receives 12%, I believe, round about there, or 10 point something percent natural gas from the Gulf. So if the gas is impacted, then how is Japan looking at this attack on Iran's gas field, and are they also viewing it as escalation in the attack? And what talks are now being held either to cease or continue or to come to better terms regarding this war? Why does it matter globally? Qatar has pumped billions into developing its side of the gas field and is the world's second biggest supplier of liquefied natural gas. So the second biggest supplier of natural gas. We don't want to hurt that. The global economy will cry if this site gets serious damages from the attack. Officials told CNN that the Qatar site was a vital energy source for the US, Europe, and the world. So as an important and vital source for the US and Europe and the rest of the world, clearly we see Washington saying, hey, we did not participate in this, we did not coordinate this attack, and there will be no further attacks pertaining to the gas field because this is important to the world's economy. But let's get back to the report.
What else do we know about the long list of targets that we understand Israel has at this point? They were, it seems, targeted at individuals and groups inside of Iran. I'm just wondering whether this long list includes other installations outside of Tehran and the sort of, the neighborhoods.
That answer is almost certainly. They're not going to give us a target list of what's remaining just yet, but we have seen them expand where they are striking. Yesterday, they acknowledged striking on Iran's northern border. Their first strikes, they say, in northern Iran. Israeli officials tell us they hit Iranian naval assets in the Caspian Sea, which is, again, the first time we've seen that since the war. There are also almost certainly more targeted killings that Israel is planning to carry out, including against Mujtaba Khamenei and others. So that list certainly has more targets on it, Becky, as the war continues.
With the escalation of the attacks on Israel's list for planned attacks, will they go outside of the US in coordination and act on its own again, or will we continue to see a solidified effort in this campaign in Iran for this regime change? And what is most favorable to the Iranian people and the rest of the world, considering the Gulf and its importance with oil and the world's economy? But let's continue to listen.
What do you make of this apparent split between the US and Israel, with President Trump in a rare rebuke of Israel saying the US knew nothing about the strike on a key Iranian gas field after Iranian state media blamed both the US and Israel, and President Trump calling on Israel to end all strikes on energy targets?
Good move, President.
My thinking about that is that President Trump has made a political analysis, and that is that the greatest vulnerability we in the United States, and especially the world, as your previous commentators have made mention, is vulnerability in the energy sector. So that particular
very much potent vulnerability in the energy sector. We don't want to harm the world's economy with this campaign for a regime change in Iran. We want a healthy economy, we want a thriving economy, and we don't want to have to start over building new facilities and the cost of to rebuild these facilities after suffering severe damages. So, yes.
Political pressure, both domestic and foreign, is felt by President Trump. And what he saw was an attack perhaps, we don't know this for certain, but certainly initiated by Israel. Whether or not Israel had any previous approval or at least giving alerts to the United States, doubtful, nobody knows. But that hit energy. And if there is anything that President Trump does not want to happen, that is a political downslide as a result of an uproar both in the United States and around the world, about the desperate circumstances that are resulting from the, quite frankly, the embargo of fossil fuels, natural gas, petroleum, bottled up down there at the Straits of Hormuz.
Could this signal?
Absolutely. We don't want this confusion, this create a chokehold on the world's economy with what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. We definitely do not want that. The world will cry if that happens. And the world is actually already feeling it. There has been rises in the gas, even in the US as we speak. We'll talk about that a little later on. But let's continue to listen.
The US stepping back a little bit here?
I am an optimistic person, so perhaps. I'm not one of these who have, optimism hasn't pushed me to the point in which I would embrace the expectation that this war will end in another week to 2 weeks. And that's because we use an expression in the military, the enemy has a vote. And what that means, quite simply, is we can have all the best plans in the world. We can establish our objectives, limited or broader, but we are in a conflict with a regime that has a long history grounded in religious fanaticism. It is not so simple to encourage the Iranian leadership to abandon what, from its perspective, is an existential conflict. Meaning, Iran, from the date of its formation in 1979, has dedicated itself to self-preservation and directly, and has expressed very clearly, destruction of Israel and the implementation or imposition of huge pain on the United States. I don't see the Iranians necessarily backing down, regardless of what President Trump has done vis-a-vis Israel and the bombing of the South Paw's oil fields.
So as we just heard, Iran has a long history of self-preservation, and this will hurt talks of de-escalation, US's involvement, Israel's involvement there with the campaign for a new regime change. If they de-escalate, how would Iran respond with the de-escalation? If they continue this conflict, and how long will it continue to soften Iran's response, soften any uprising there once the dust settles on this conflict? There seems to be some political along with religious mixture in terms of Iran's outlook on all of this and how they intend to position themselves in the Gulf and how they want to be seen on the world stage. Let's continue.
About boots on the ground, a US military ship with almost 2,500 military personnel on board is heading to the region, and according to Reuters, the Trump administration is considering sending thousands more. Now, we don't know exactly what they'll be doing, but there is talk of them getting troops to extract Iran's enriched uranium or possibly sending them to Karg Island. How risky would these ground operations be?
First way to answer that question is to incorporate what you have described as two objectives of U.S. land forces. One is securing the uranium that is buried across Iran, locations not necessarily well known. That is a very difficult task because you're putting American soldiers in harm's way deep inside the country, and that becomes a real fight on the ground.
That would be a very delicate situation to put the American troops in, and for the US's economy as well to finance that as well. I can't imagine the families, friends, relatives that would be just confused, some with fears. Others may show support, while others will be just disheartened with, questioning whether or not their relatives, their loved ones, husbands, sons would make it back home. And so it's a very delicate situation to think about putting the U.S. troops in with this ongoing conflict. But it's something to be considered in terms of settling and setting up a system to organize and to restructure this hope of a better regime in Iran.
Second use of American soldiers, at least from my perspective, is to establish some sort of enclave around the Straits of Hormuz. That is the area of vulnerability.
Very, very true. The most important site there is in the Gulf is the Strait of Hormuz, and you want to harmonize with the supporters, the allies, to make sure that there is protected to transport the oil for everyone that's depending on the oil transport there in the Strait of Hormuz. But thank you for joining us. We will continue later on with more on this conflict and US and Israel's campaign in Iran.